So much for staying with us, and this is Good Morning Kenya, the show you're watching on KBC Channel 1. Thank you so much for creating time since 6 a.m. in the morning until now to be part of these great conversations that we're having on air that will help you have insights onto some of the most important issues that affect society and affect you as an individual. So today, every Monday, like we always do, we have Family Check, a segment where we get to sit down and talk about issues that affect families in different dimensions. And today, our topic of conversation is something that is very special as we get to look at the aspect of disability. And this time around, the reason it's different, it's because we are going into the specifics. Many a times we've discovered that when we talk about disability, we sort of generalize disability and get to talk about the challenges and the issues on a general perspective. But rarely do we take time to look at the unique populations, look at women, look at men, look at children, look at even the elderly people who have disabilities and look at their unique issues and what we can be able to do to fill the gaps of what they are going through. So today we choose to talk about the children because that is where it starts. A larger population of people with disabilities were born with this condition, and if we want to solve the problems of people with disabilities in the society, let's begin from the children. Let's look at how we are treating them at the family level. How are we raising them? What opportunities are we giving them to be useful citizens in the society? When we see them being so dependent on other people, what have we done to make them be able to be independent and take care of themselves? So this is what we want to talk about discriminations, the stigma, what the law says, and just generally acceptance that children with disabilities are not a curse, they are not a burden, they are not all that negative that people have, believed them to be. So stay with us for the next few minutes, the next 1 hour or so, as we dissect this particular subject. I'm joined by a panel of 4. Allow me to introduce them now, all coming from different angles of this particular conversation. I'll start from the seat just directly across to me. The gentleman you see there is a father of a child with autism, and he will be telling us more about this experience. His name is Bernard Nyariki. He has also turned, courtesy of that experience, he has also turned to be a children's rights child protection officer, and he will be sharing with us more about that. Then we have a lady just sitting right next to him. Her name is Angeline Mukuche. Angeline is a disability advocate, also the chair lady of the Malaika Special Self-Help Group. And we have another lady on set here, the legal mind in this particular conversation. Her name is Claire Adionyi, a lecturer at Strathmore Law School. And just next to me, we have Richard Magana is the project manager at Orione Community Training Center, usually just advocating for the rights of people with disabilities. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me this morning for this very important conversation. And I always start by looking at the picture, and if we're talking about an issue, let's see how big of a problem it is before we get to the nitty-gritties of why it is a problem and what we can be able to do to solve. And Richard, this question goes to you. As a country, do we have relevant data or information that can actually tell us clearly how many children we have that have disabilities? When you talk about disability in general, have we gone into the nitty-gritties of even separating the segments of population and have data that can really address the percentage of the population of children with disabilities in our country? Do we have that yet?
Well, thank you. I think we don't have that. This is one of the main challenges that we're facing as a country. It's because we lack data, specific data that tells us what is the number of, let's say, children and youth with intellectual disability condition X. We don't have this data. And this lack of data then...
Also, you're even going down into the specific type of disability,
Yes,
not just disability
not
in
just
general.
any disability.
Okay.
This data is not there. And when we lack data, we lack proper ways of planning or even looking for ways how we can alleviate this problem or give solutions, because without numbers, you don't know what exactly are you addressing. What is the number of schools that you need? How many rehabilitation centers does the country need? We cannot plan well because we don't have the numbers. Yes.
I agree with you. And I'll come to you, Bernard. You also come from the same center, and you are a child protection officer. You look at these children and their lives and their status, and today we are talking about awareness and fighting for their rights. If you look at the gap in between this objective and the reality on the ground when you talk to these families, are we meeting it? Are we getting closer to a solution when it comes to this issue?
Well, I cannot say really that we are not getting the solution to the challenges that we are facing. But let me say that there is a big gap. And even trying to really get to the bottom line of the solution is in itself a challenge. Because people with the disability, there are different forms of disability. And different families react differently to the different forms of disability. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to how has the family really approached the issue. Have they accepted the condition of a member of their family, or they are still in denial? Yeah.
Now that you brought that up, take us through your own personal experience. Your son is now 10 years old.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about your own experience and even how you got to that point of acceptance. Because I know initially it wasn't that easy to accept and even the information to sink. And even you were sharing with me earlier that even knowing that your son had a problem took a bit of time, you know. Tell us a bit about that experience.
Indeed, the biggest challenge is trying to really diagnose the problem. And at what point did the manifestation start to come out?
Yes.
And at what point did you get to realize that this child has a problem? Because, like, for example, myself,
yes,
my child is autistic.
Yeah.
So at what point did I get to realize that my child is autistic? Yeah, that in itself was a big challenge.
Yes.
At first, it was even more complicated because I was the first-time parent. Yeah, and just like another parent, I had expectations. I want to see my child grow like another normal child. But again, with time, I started realizing that there's a problem, as in speech is not coming. Toileting was also another problem. And yeah, these are some of the things I started really seeing as being
as they grow.
Yeah. And again, I started looking at my friends' families. You know, your child is 2 years and is already uttering some words. Okay. Mine is 2 years and is not able to. And yeah, some of these challenges were coming out. And my case, I can say, was a bit different and unique because my child lost the mother at a very early stage.
Okay.
So breastfeeding was not there. And even teething was a problem, actually, because the milk teeth that developed then started causing problems. And even when I went to hospital, the doctors advised that the teeth be removed. So at that point, on issues on speech, I was told that the teeth also has an effect to speech. So I have to be patient and wait for the development of teeth, and that's when now the child will start to speak. As in, of course, I had no choice but to wait.
Yeah. Based on the fact that you also didn't have enough information.
I didn't have enough information. Yeah. And also, toileting was another problem. Why is this happening? The reasons I was told is maybe I'm not taking care of the child as I'm supposed to take care of. I was not giving proper care of the child. So there was this issue of waiting and waiting and waiting to a level where, at the point where I was informed that my child had autism, this is now when I was told that I could have intervened earlier. Yeah.
You should have. I like her reaction, Claire, and I'd like to bring you into this conversation, just as we expect to get more from you, Bernard. Claire, what do you think, has been the biggest problem, for parents who are having such a child at home? For him, one of the biggest challenges was lack of information, and even the caregivers, the people who are interacting with the child and offering the help that was needed, were not giving him the information that he really needs. What do you feel is the biggest problem parents are facing?
I think from a legal perspective,
Yes.
there's a very big disconnect between what is written in law and what is actually happening in practice.
Yes.
So there's no substantive enjoyment of rights, because there's a lot of laws in Kenya that speak on the right of the child or the right of children with disabilities. For one, we have the Children's Act of 2011, and even the Constitution itself under Article 53 gives an array of rights for these children. And there's one important issue, which is the best interest of the child. From there, everything else flows. So from such an issue, it's actually very sad and disappointing, because the law is there. It's quite categorical, and we're also parties to the Convention on the Rights of Children, the Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities. So you would expect that with this array of laws in place, that there will be institutions in place to support families, to support parents. But because no one is implementing, or we are failing at the implementing stage, then such issues arise. Because there is law. There's law protecting him as a parent, there's law protecting his child. But from what we are seeing, there's a clear failure of that law, in the sense that his child was not protected as he should have been.
Okay, I'll come back to you so that we break down more on the law aspect of this conversation. But let me also bring you in, Angeline. Tell us a bit about yourself. When we talk about children with disabilities today, we may just talk, but you've worn that shoe, you've grown in that environment, you have seen what is happening. You understand better where the shoe pinches. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Thank you. Disability as a whole is a medical issue. So with our parents, they do not understand. They only think, they see it physically. So that if your child is not walking well, something comes to your mind to say, there must be a problem. Maybe it's a disability, but there are many types of disabilities. So our culture also will affect us. When your parent will see you with a child who is not walking well, the parent will tend to hide, maybe keep you away from the other children. So you are disabled, you are hidden away from the society. So
for your own case, did you experience these forms of discrimination?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your story.
I got disabled when I was 3-4 years, and I was born in a family of 12. I'm number 10. So when I can remember when I was small, most of the time when visitors could come home, every time my sister or someone will be told, take the child away. When, for example, this Christmas, people are going for shopping. My father and the other children will go. I'll be left at home. So when they come home with the clothes, I'll just be given. I don't have a choice to say, like, I want
This
a yellow one or a green one.
Or even just the experience of being part of
that excitement. People are going for shopping. It's Christmas. There's a party. So always they choose for you. You have no choice to make. You have no choice even to say, maybe I don't like this, or anything that is left behind is yours. If there are plates maybe on the table, everybody will pick a plate, but the one that is left will be given. Yes. Or if it's feeding or eating, they may start eating, you'll eat after, or you will eat before them. So because maybe someone wants to feed you, or maybe there's something they have to do for you, you'll be number last always, or number one. So you cannot do it like together with the others.
When you got to that age where now you could discern what was going on in your environment, how did you feel? How was your psychology affected, and even your general well-being?
I was taken to boarding school at an early age, like class 1. I had been taken to a boarding school, so I was not getting to understand what's happening. But I thought it was love. But
the others were not in boarding school?
They were not.
Okay.
So I was like maybe 8 years or in boarding, far away from home, and maybe only my father could come to see me. No, my mother was not coming, my sisters were not coming. So I was wondering, what is really wrong? I'm not feeling any pain. Nobody's telling me anything. I'm not being told maybe you are this or this. I don't know what it is. I also see that my legs are not equal. but I don't know what's wrong
What
with
is
them.
happening? Nobody is telling you what
Yes.
is happening.
Nobody's telling what is happening.
And this is an example of a lot of discriminations that happen to children with disabilities. And Richard, I'd like to bring you in on this. Probably as you work at the center and even as you interact with these stories and experiences, because you empower, the parents a lot. Why do you think, it could get to a point that Angeline got, and hundreds and thousands of children are facing, the same kind of environment? Why is it so hard for parents to get to a point where they accept that my child may not be the same as the others, but they are just children at the end of the day?
So thank you for that. But just before I answer to your question, let me just briefly talk about the institution, what we do. We work with children and youth with intellectual disabilities. This is an institution under the Catholic Congregation of Sons Divine Providence, whose founder is St. Luigi Orione, whose charism was to work with the most vulnerable people in the society. And for him, these most vulnerable were children and youth with disabilities, and specifically intellectual, because they need permanent support throughout their life. They'll always need that. And we try to answer this through education, rehabilitation, and training in farming. Now, to come back to the question, what is the real problem actually is a lack of information. Because you see, for Angeline, if she had information, if the parents had the information, if they knew that this condition manifests itself like this, maybe the level of acceptance would be higher. Yes?
One can look at it in two ways. It could come from an evil point of view, and it could come from an ignorance point of view. So where are you basing your opinion on? Is it an ignorance point of view? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would actually say it's half and half.
Half and half.
Half and half.
Okay.
Because if there's no information, then I become ignorant. And as much as we all know how our society perceives issues, matters to do with disability, if there's no information, yes, that's a problem.
Okay.
But also, like we heard from Bernard, when he goes to the hospital with a child asking, why is my child not able to speak or utter some words at this age? Maybe the doctors or the practitioners there will say, wait for the teeth to develop and all these things. So you see, as much as the parent is informed and is looking for answers, the answers are still not there.
The people are supposed to be giving the answers.
They don't give the right answers. So you see, it's a relationship that is there. And when one does not answer, then the problem now manifests itself bigger. So I think that's where the main problem is.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
Ignorance seems to be coming out, very clearly in this conversation. And no wonder we are talking about it this morning, to raise the levels of awareness about disability. With disability, the earlier you detect, the easier it becomes to rehabilitate, because it's that whole process of rehabilitating the child. But the later, you discover that is what you will be told, like what Bernard was told. You came in too late. Why couldn't you bring this child early? But Bernard, yours is sort of a different kind of an experience. You accepted early. Were there motivating factors around your environment that gave you at least a good starting point with your son? You accepted early. It seems like it didn't bother you much that you had a child with disability.
Yeah, perhaps maybe the question will be, at what point did I accept?
Yes.
Yeah. And like another parent, I had the expectation, what I expected of my child. Yeah. I wanted to see my child grow. I wanted to see my child go to school. I wanted to see my child play with other children out there. I wanted to take my child out. All these things were not forthcoming. So I had to dig deeper and really try to get what is the problem with my child. But I can tell you that it did not come out of hospital. It came out from the experience that I started sharing with my friends, my colleagues in my workplace. I was sharing with them, telling them what I'm undergoing. And I can say that they were kind enough. Some came with their children, and then we were now trying to compare my child and their
children.
And their children. And there was something missing. And then, was it a medical condition? I didn't know, because already I was in hospital and the doctors had advised APCD.
To wait.
Yeah, to wait and wait and wait. But for how long was I supposed to wait? Now, I want to see my child go to school, right? Now I've taken my child to school, and unfortunately the schools, most of the private schools here in Nairobi, they accepted the child, and then the teachers were like, your child is a slow learner. Right? Now this is another term coming up. Yeah, why is he a slow learner? I mean, I was not a slow learner in school.
Yes.
So what is really happening here? So again, I had to go back to hospital because I really want to ask the doctors,
What
would
is
there
going
be an
on?
underlying problem?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so from the dental unit to the neurological department, yeah, to counseling.
And nobody's giving you answers?
Nobody's giving
After how
me.
many years now? Your son was how many years?
Now, this is when he was around 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. And thank God at some point, one doctor advised me that some interventions needed to be done, and maybe I should find out if my child is suffering from what was called autism.
Okay.
And that's the first time I got to hear of that word.
Oh, you were hearing the word for the
Yeah.
first time.
So I started to Google to find out, to share with friends what is autism all about. Are there another children out there
Who have
yeah,
autism.
who has the same condition? And that's when I came face to face with the reality that there was that condition and that I had to live with it. So the first step was, how then do I live with this condition? And which school do I take my child to? That was another problem. I did not find a facility
That is
ready
there.
to accommodate
All right.
my child with that condition.
All right, and to talk about the schools and what I'm just about to bring up, it is a report that was done by the Disability Rights International. I believe they did this together with our very own Kenya Association for the Mentally Handicapped. They titled it Infanticide, Abuse and Killing of Children with Disabilities. And in that status report, they've given so many issues that kind of bring this discrimination to a higher level. They've talked about the pressure on the parent side to kill a child with disability. They've talked about, you know, the social isolation, sort of what Angeline was sharing earlier. They've talked about issues to do with medical negligence. It's coming out very clearly with what Bernard is sharing. And lack of support from just families and friends in society. And so many issues that they've brought out in this particular report. As, you know, from their own perspective and their findings, they looked at almost over 20, you know, centers that, you know, rehabilitate children with disabilities, and they were interviewing and sort of like trying to find out what's going on. I don't know where you stand in this. Let me start with you, Claire. I don't know where you stand with this, the findings of this particular report, and even going down into some of the recommendations of the solutions, because we cannot have a report without recommendations on how to solve these issues. Yeah.
Generally, I would like to commend the good faith behind the report, because as it is, I believe that's the only report of that kind that has been done in Kenya.
Yes.
And it's almost useless to implement laws without knowing what's on the ground.
Yeah, the scope of the problem.
Which ties to the question you asked him at the beginning about data, etc.
Yes.
So this report would be good for that. But my challenges with it is, for instance, the authors, none of the authors are local based, none of them are actually Kenyans. And there's a lot of representation, there's a lot of people in Kenya who could actually be able to speak very well on this issue, research very well on this issue, people who have interest, people who are working with children with disabilities, for instance, Orione, or parents who, other than being a parent to the child, they also have professional knowledge of this issue, or even academics, lawyers, etc. There's a lot of people in Kenya who could have been able to take part in that report. So that said,
so we need initiative from our own end to write about our own problem in our own way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then beyond that, a lot of the issues that have been mentioned there, and as we've said, are things that the panel has also discussed.
Yeah.
So it's true they are there. But some of the recommendations that they're offering, I don't think they're well suited for the Kenyan situation. For instance, they're recommending deinstitutionalization, which basically means removing children from these institutions and taking them back home. And yet in the same report, they're saying that this Kenya, and as we've discussed, we have a problem of stigma and lack of support from the family and the society.
But you know, one of the justifications would be they looked at several centers and the way they are equipped and the way the environment is like and the kind of treatment, you know, these children are getting in these centers. And there was nothing good to write home about. it was not to the standard that actually would offer value, to these children during their stay in those centers. So one would argue probably it's better to stay at home.
But you see,
Yeah, go ahead, Angela. Just hold
Our facilities at home are not better. So Kenya as a whole, we still have a lot of shortcomings on disability issues. We don't. First of all, we don't understand. We don't have accessible. Even our houses are not accessible. So there's so much that we have to do at home, which is worse than where they are. So we are not better.
So
Yes.
home is not the best
No.
environment. You had an opinion concerning one of the solutions they are offering, that is to bring them back home. What you're doing is different. It's a more wholesome approach to this whole, inclusion conversation. Talk to us about it.
Okay, thank you. Us, how we run the center is a day center. It's a day system whereby the children and youth come in the morning and then in the afternoon they leave back for their homes. Because we realize that issues to do with disability is a collective journey that we need to walk all together. We have institutions, yes, like Orione Community Training Center, but we cannot do everything for these children and youth. We cannot do everything. As such, we need the support from the society. We also need the support from the parents, most importantly. So in this system that we're having at the center, we push the parents who's, when they start, the commitment is not so good, because remember, again, they're coming from a point of view of not accepting these realities. So when the center opens or when an institution comes in offering these services, the first approach the parents have is to bring the children there, and from there they expect everything. They expect that they even, some of them come and ask, now will my child be okay? Will he be cured of this disease or this condition? But unfortunately, no. But we tell them that this is a journey that we need to walk together. We'll do our part. We'll do the rehabilitation, the education, and the training. But you need to replicate the same at home. Then the society itself needs also to accept these children, to love them and to respect them. For us, this wholesome approach is what is actually empowering these children and youth. And as such, now we have a group of 16 youth, for instance, who after a process of training for 3 years will be graduating and will be employed as farmers and in other capacities in the center. But you see, this is a journey that has taken over 5 years to train them, to educate them, to rehabilitate. It's never easy. It's never easy. And like Angeline says, the solution is not to bring them, to take them home. No. It cannot be just that radical, that now close up all the centers and take them home. No, it's a journey that we need to look for the best way to approach it. Because in every other way, there's always a consequence, and we must be ready to accept the reality that is there.
Okay. Angeline, there's something I want to ask. Looking at where we've come from far in terms of awareness on disability, but it's so unfortunate that even today we still report things like pressure to kill a child with disability today. And the stigma and the superstitions and, things that are said about people with disability in the society. Probably tell us more about what you have experienced or heard, something that was the weirdest thought that one could ever have about somebody with disability.
Culture. In our tradition, first of all, a child with disability is a mother's child. The child with disability is a mother's child. So first of all, they look at your mother. What did you do that was not right? Are you a witch? Is it a bad omen?
Were you unfaithful? I saw something about that.
Are you sure this child is from this community? Are you sure? So that fear makes my mother and me separated from the family as a whole. So my mother is scared of telling people that Angeline is disabled. Or even my mother may not know, because he's also worried. Maybe I did something. Maybe she's also scared. The names that she has been given are really tormenting her. And yet Angeline is there. My father, my children, and their relatives don't want to see me. So it's really affecting the society when the child with disabled is a mother's child, and the mother should look for a solution. You must have done something wrong to the community, to the society, to the gods, somewhere.
Even the gods are brought into this conversation.
Yes.
For you to have a child with disability.
Yes. And especially the mother.
Yes. Bernard, where do you stand in this? Do you feel like it was an offense to the gods? And how do you talk to these parents? Because you also at the center and you get to have conversations with parents. How do you get into their minds for them to be able to get to a point of acceptance like you did? What strategies do you employ?
Let me tell you that when I was going around looking for a school that can accept my child, a friend advised me to one of the institutions, I won't mention the name, and when I went there, I explained the condition of my child, and the teacher there told me that, yeah, they offer services to children suffering from such conditions. I was very excited, of course, and I remember I used to carry my child to school, but then I was not driving, so I was carrying him all the way to school. But one funny thing I noticed is that most children who were brought to that institution, they were being driven to school. And I was very observant that people could drive in, stop the car at the entrance to the office, and then the caregivers would go open the door,
And
carry
take
the child right into the class. So at some point, actually I observed that for quite some time. And at some point, I even asked the management of that institution, why is it so difficult to see the parents
Carry the child.
yeah, carry the child, just the same way I'm doing it?
Yes.
And she was kind enough, she shared with me that some of the families who bring their children here don't want to identify themselves
With that child.
Yeah, with these children. And actually, we are like taking care of them. Basically, they come in the evening, we put them back in the car. They take them home. And even when there is a break, the parents request the management to extend the term. Like now
So
they
they
should not
stay
close.
longer in
Yeah, they
school.
stay longer.
Oh
and
my.
staying longer means paying more.
They don't mind the money
They
aspect.
don't mind the money.
They just want the child out of their way.
Yeah, so I was like, is it that these parents don't want to identify themselves with their children? Is it that they don't know the condition of their children? Is it that they don't want to spend time with their children? What is really happening? Do they have another children at home? So that's when it caught my attention that something was really, really wrong.
Yeah.
And it also encouraged me to really go deeper and know the condition of my child and many other children who are in that institution, what they were suffering from. And from there, I was able to know the services that which are required if these children are to be rehabilitated. So I started to share with that institution, do they have the facilities? Do they have the equipment? Because all I wanted was to see my child move from one level to another. Let me say that the family here plays a key
big
role.
role.
Yeah,
I
it plays a
like
key
all
role.
this coming from you. At one point, you were just an ordinary man, just, you know, in that journey of parenthood, no information about disability. But being in that, experience made you become sort of an expert and even giving advice on what needs to be done and all that. Because you accepted your situation and you accepted the journey of your son. And many parents have not gotten to that space till date. And I want us to look into the legal world a bit. Earlier, I asked Richard a question whether it could be coming from an evil point of view, that you just really don't want to take care of your child, or an ignorance point of view, where you really don't know what's going on, you're scared, you don't have information. But that category of parents that take their kids and don't want to really associate with them, I would say I have a mixture of both. It's both evil and it's ignorance. It can start from ignorance, but if you really have a good heart, you can want to learn, like what Bernard did. You can Google, you can go places to ask and get empowered and find a solution for your son or daughter. But is there anything that the law has done or policies that have made this framework easy, that even action can be taken against a parent who willingly neglects a child with disability? Is there anything to that effect as we speak today?
Generally, especially from the provision of non-discrimination, there's room for child protection officers to come in and the children's services to come in to try and rectify the situation. But then when I mentioned the issue of best interest of the child, it all comes down to that. So the courts and the law enforcement and the organizations that are working around this issue start to ask themselves this question: is it actually in the best interest of this child to force them away from their homes? And so in the instance of Orione, for instance, it's a day school, more or less. So if you force this child out of their home, at the end of the school day, where do they go?
Yes.
And so generally, it's a bit problematic. And even the Children's Bill 2017 that is it's being proposed to turn into law.
Yes.
One of its overriding objective is promoting and strengthening families. So you see, when that is the objective of the act, the substantive act on this issue in this country, then it becomes a bit problematic to have some sort of aggressive approach to this. So I think at the end of the day, what needs to be done is the issue of sensitization, and then which tunes into what he said and what we've all said, such that all stakeholders come into it. So you have the support of the family, you have the support of the law, which is already there, and you have the support of other institutions. I think that would be the best way of dealing with this. Yes.
The law should be the last resort, sort of, like it shouldn't be a problem.
An aggressive an aggressive approach to this would not have very good outcomes, not
really
for
help.
the child.
But as a child protection officer, also add on to this subject, is there something really that can be done? Because there are parents that just needs to be pushed to offer these rights, because even these children have rights to education, to health, and all that. But we have parents who are just willingly not, they don't care. They don't even seek information or seek where these services are found.
Yeah,
Can something be done?
Yeah, pushing parents, we must admit that has its own repercussions.
Yes.
Yeah, if you introduce law to a family with a member living with a disability, you tend to scare them off. I think the most important thing is you should get down to know what the really family is undergoing.
Yes.
And in our cultural setup, you know, they believe people want to send their children to school. They have expectations, right? You want to invest in your child because you want him or her to come out stronger and also to be independent. So when you convince a parent to take a child, especially with intellectual disability, to school, you must convince this child that at some point this child will grow to become independent. Yeah, that in itself is a challenge. Now, perhaps at the Orione Community Training Center, the approach is very different. We appreciate that law plays a big role in at least making parents bring their children to school. But again, we appreciate the fact that there is stigmatization in these families. So the best thing is to first get to understand what these families are undergoing. Yeah, what they are going through.
And solve that first.
Yeah, and solve that first. You have to listen to them, and then you have to convince them that this child, by putting or letting the child stay at home, you are not doing any good to this child. Yeah, and that this child needs APCD. You must first identify the condition of the child, then what this child needs, the services that this child needs, and then you again have to tell this parent the expectations. Yeah, that if you are going to invest in this child in this area, he will come out stronger. And that's why we have established our internal policy, protection policy, and that ensures that there are resources, there are structures in place, and even personnel to take care of
these children.
Yeah, of these children. Yeah. So that way, we have trainings, we have workshops for both parents and staff, yeah, to bring them on board and to show that really we have to move from one level to another. Remember, at Orione, those parents who have brought their children to school, that already in itself is a milestone. They have
it's
accepted.
A step in the right direction.
In the right direction.
Yeah.
But again, what happens to many others out there who have not brought their children to school? Yeah. So we are really focusing on those ones who are languishing. I can say languishing in their homes. We want them also to be brought, to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anjali, I want to tap into your experience. You've worked at UPDK and even the Association of People with who are mentally handicapped. And you have been in that world for so many years. You understand more about what people with disabilities need generally. I want you to look at a child with disability and their journey to growth and talk to us about 4 main issues that you feel they need for them to eventually be useful citizens in the society along the way. Just 4. I know there are many, but 4 key areas that you feel going forward the country should focus on with regards to these children to make them useful and independent. Let's not make people with disabilities more disabled. Once, somebody shared with me on this set, and I like that quote. Tell me more. What can we do?
First of all, it starts from home. There should be love from home and understanding of the child. So when you are loved at home and they understand you, they are able to support you, then at least you have a way out. Then education is very important. Our education system and people with disabilities is not yet good enough. We don't have enough maybe education facilities, the syllabus itself, the teachers, few teachers, few schools, syllabus is not understood by everybody. So the education system does not also understand people with disabilities, the children. So they are slow learners, they are hyper, they are autism. So that syllabus, exam settings, how do you go about it with the children with disabilities? Do you understand their needs? If, for example, you have a child who is blind, do you have an exam set in Braille? Do you have all the machines? Maybe we have the software like JAWS. Is it enough?
So tailor education to meet the different specific disabilities.
Yes. We are still not yet there.
Okay.
We are still not yet there. For example, like in Western, maybe where I come from, you'll get 2 or 3 schools with the mostly with the deaf, children with the deaf. But these other type of disabilities, you just struggle your way.
They're generalized under one
you struggle
big
your
category.
Way. For example, like now, some schools have some exams or some institutions. They say a child with a disability, give more time. Maybe the others are stopping with the 2 hours, a paper of 2 hours. Give this one 2.5 or 3 hours.
Is that what they need?
It's not about time. If I can't see the paper, even if
can't.
you give me a whole day,
you can't.
You are not helping me. So our structures are not yet in place. Then health facilities, our health institutions, doctors, nurses, we still don't have enough. They do not understand us. When you go there, for example, like now, we have institutions that are doing like National Council. They request maybe before you register as a person with disability, you go for disability assessment. The doctor will just look at you and then write something down. So what have you done?
What are they examining?
Yes, what are you telling the National Council? What are you saying? What is wrong with Angeline? So they do not understand us. Our medical system still has a lot of gaps. And then that is education, health. And home. That is in our background. Employment.
Yeah, and I was about to come to that.
Yes.
And let me just quickly allow Claire to interject in this. There's that law, part of the law that touches on giving some sort of space for employment of persons with disabilities. Is it being done just out of goodwill, or is there something that can be done in the event that you go to a place and you find that the staff, out of the entire staff members, there is no person with disability? Can something be done, or it's still under goodwill as long as you're willing as an employer?
Since it's part of the law, technically it means that something should be done.
Yes.
And based on that legal background and force, then the government should be able to put measures to ensure that corporations, even private institutions, are able to fulfill this quota, just the same way we've done with the 2/3 majority issue. There's actually been a lot of interest and participation to make sure that this is happening. So the courts have taken part in it. When such an issue goes to court, the courts have ruled in that favor. There was a lot of conferences, sensitization. There was a lot of targeted effort towards making the two-thirds majority happen. Yeah. So I think there also needs to be targeted efforts towards making the issue of meaningful employment for persons with disabilities a reality.
I like the word meaningful. Yeah. Not just employment for the second. My director Sheila has thrown in something very useful, that even now the government is really supportive to employers who are embracing persons with disabilities. They help a lot and they encourage, you know, for more spaces to be created for persons with disabilities. And I'm really pressed for time as I'm trying to juggle in between what we should discuss in the remaining few minutes. But I'd like also to bring in Bernard to give us your thoughts. You know, now we're sort of like talking on the way forward and the solutions that we need. She has shared her mind. She has shared her mind. Probably, you know, as a parent and you've walked in this journey, if you're given an opportunity to address the nation right now and tell them, guys, this is what we need to do. This is the silver bullet that is going to make the world better for children with disabilities, to afford even just a smile, if nothing else. What is that one thing that you'd like to tell them this morning?
Well, I think that as a nation, we are giving a wrong approach, especially to disability. And unfortunately, I can say, from where I sit, the government has put more emphasis on people living with physical disability against the other forms of disability. You will find that most people with intellectual disability are not captured. Angela mentioned about the National Council for Persons with Disability. Yeah, I listen to parents every day, those who come seeking for admission in our institution. They come with that form, which we are supposed to fill, and we are also supposed to help them fill that form. And there's nowhere in that form that people with intellectual disability are captured, other than that line which where you are supposed to spell out the form of disability. So I don't know whether we fall under any other form
the
of...
others.
Yeah, the others. So which are these other form of disability? And then what form of support is the nation giving? Do you expect a child living with disability to go through the normal schooling system to the university, from primary, secondary to university? No. And then theirs is unique in a way. In fact, at some point, the funds that they distribute to people with disability, they tell them to go in groups, right? Now, do you expect people with intellectual disability to
find themselves and form a group and have an organized
national council? And even the money which is given to these families, now does the government follow
to see how it's being
how that money is being utilized? I'm tempted to think that that money is meant to feed these people
who do not
home.
even have disability.
Now, that's why I'm saying that at Orione Center, we are always ready to give as an example, a showcasing example of how this situation can be tamed. Where you advise parents, where you identify the condition of a child.
Allow me cut you short. 20 seconds, your final words. We are crossing over to somebody's time. Really dangerous. Final word.
My final word, first of all, is to say thank you, because these such forums is where we are able to create this awareness. This is what we need to be talking about. A lot of the news that we have now is about politics, issues, other issues, but nobody is really putting emphasis about this reality that is also affecting the nation in one way. But perhaps what I would like to share with families and how maybe is the solution for me is just a three-way approach. First, we need to acceptance through all strategies that are there. The law is there and everything. We need to accept this reality. We need to love persons and people in this reality. We need to empower them and love them. Then we need to respect, because for me I feel in these three avenues we'll have the answers and the solutions that we need.
So accept, respect and love. Why should I water that down? That is such a climax for this particular conversation. Thank you so much for creating time to be with us on Good Morning Kenya this morning. Let us wake you up tomorrow once again on Tuesday with another edition of Good Morning Kenya. But thank you so much for today. Keep watching KBC Channel 1. This is the place to be. We have so much lined up for you throughout the day. My name is Afin Achieng Oma. On behalf of my co-hosts Regina Manyara Gitao and Ram Aguko, thank you so much for according us your audience this morning, and on behalf of the entire production crew as well. Keep watching KBC Channel 1 and have yourselves a lovely day.